Hi and welcome to my very first bake along minute for minute video where I'm going to be making standard white bread right along with you. All you have to do is pay attention, watch, and you'll see how it should come together for you in your kitchen. This is a little bit different. We're gonna do something that I've been considering doing for quite some time. That's a minute for minute bake. That means for every minute that I spend doing something, you're gonna spend it with me. And that'll give you a real feel to the actual process with nothing cut out. Now, I will ask you to pause for periods that we're waiting. So keep in mind that you will have to make some pauses. As a result, I need you to do something which will save you if you lose your place. Go ahead and subscribe right now to the channel and also like this video. That will put it in your YouTube history and it'll make it a whole lot easier to get back to if you happen to get sidetracked or drawn away or whatever during the times where you're waiting. So do that now. I'm not going to turn off the cameras until it's time to pause. I will be changing angles occasionally just so you can get a different perspective, like the fact that I'm in a real kitchen, not in some studio that, is unattainable by everyone. So it's a real kitchen. Easy enough, right? Okay, let's get to it. There's a list down in the description of the things that you're going to need for this bake, as well as the recipe. So if you need to take a look at it now and make sure you have everything you need before we get started. The first thing we need is a digital scale. The reason you need a digital scale is because we are going to weigh our ingredients and we're going to weigh them in grams. So we're going to put in 375 grams of all-purpose flour. That's 3 cups if you were measuring by cups. But as you can see, I am not using my measuring cup for anything other than to deliver it into the bowl so that we can get a nice accurate measurement. There we go, 375. Sometimes you hit it right on the nose, and sometimes you don't. Next, something we're not going to measure with the scale is water. And I need 1 cup of water. So I'm going to go to the refrigerator and get myself some filtered water. I like to use filtered water. You don't have to, but it's a good idea if you have that option. Also, when you go to the fridge, make sure you grab your butter, unsalted butter. We're going to want it to come to room temperature while we're working. So 1 cup of water. All right. And I'm going to warm it up so that it is warm but not hot. I'm aiming for 115 degrees. I'm going to do it in the microwave. Everyone's microwave is a little bit different, so you'll just kind of have to work out the timing of yours. 1 cup of water takes just less than a minute to get to 115 degrees in my microwave. So experiment. I recommend that you start a little bit lower than what you think, maybe 45 seconds or something like that, in case your microwave is more powerful than mine. Or if you have a smaller microwave, then you might want to start at a minute and just check your temperature when you get there. If you go a little over, it's not that big of a deal. Because we're not going to be adding it to any yeast. The temperature at which water kills yeast is 120 degrees or above 120 degrees. So we're going to not go over 120 degrees. And the way we're going to make sure we get that right is with an instant read thermometer. Let's check it out. All right, we got our instant read thermometer. Let's see. Perfect, 114. We're going to make kind of a well in the middle and add our water slowly as we stir. Don't worry if you get it all in there at once, but it just seems to come together a little easier if you do it this way. If I were using a stand mixer, I would be pouring it slowly, just like this, as the machine stirred it up. But we're not using a machine today, we're only using our 2 hands to make this happen. And don't worry, you can definitely do it with just your own 2 hands and maybe something like a spatula. See how it's shaggy here in the middle? It's picking up the flour, starting to come away from the sides, so you can kind of just scrape the sides and knock that flour down into the bowl. And then the dough we're forming here in the middle will kind of pick it up. Basically, I'm just kind of scraping the spatula along the edges and the inside of the bowl to dig up any flour that might want to be stuck and pushing it into the center ball. It's pretty good. Still a little bit sticky. As you can see, it's sticking to my fingers. And I can just kind of peel it off the spatula. Now you can keep going with the spatula, or you can get into it with your hands. That's how I usually like to do it because I like to feel it sort of come together. And then when it stops being tacky, I know where we need to be. All right, enough of that. Whatever you do, don't add flour. It'll feel too sticky. It's just gonna feel that way. It will come together, I promise. If you've measured accurately, this flour cannot hold much more water it'll be nicely hydrated. See, it's starting to come together into a ball. In fact, at this point, I'll probably just put it out here on the countertop. See, nothing stuck in the bowl. And just use my hand to kind of push it into the flour that's on the countertop and let it pick it up with its own moisture. Starts to get away from you, and just scrape it back into the area you're working with. It's already starting to come together. I like to kind of almost walk it around the countertop so it picks up the little bits here and there. And it's okay if it's a little bit tacky. It's supposed to be a little bit tacky at this point. You don't want to work it so much that you dry it out. So I'm just going to use my fingers to kind of pinch off a little bit of dough, rub it like this, kind of like playing with Play-Doh. You remember playing with Play-Doh? If it kind of sticks to your fingers, you can rub your hands together and it rolls up into little snakes. This is supposed to be fun, y'all. All right, and the next step is called Autolyse. Now the way Autolyse works is you take an airtight container, you put your dough ball that has only flour and water, and then you add a lid. And guess what? It's almost time to pause. because we're going to let this sit here for 45 minutes. And what happens in Autolyse is like magic. So you leave it to just sit, and all that flour soaks up the water and becomes hydrated. That builds gluten structure, and it makes it way easier to work with. Since we're doing this all by hand, I want it to be as easy as possible for both you and me. All right, so I have a little bit of a problem here, don't I, with sticky hands? Come with me, I'm gonna show you a little nice to have thing before we pause. This is called DOAP. It is a silicone block, kind of looks like a bar of soap, and it has these little nibs on it. And those little nibs are perfect for getting flour out from in between your fingers and your nail beds. So this is how I get the dough off of my hands when they are sticky and messy. It's very simple. Just turn on the water and scrub your hands with DOAP just like it was a bar of soap. The dough won't stick to the silicone, and it scrubs it off of your hands gently. It's very comfortable, and well, that's why it's on my list of nice to haves, because it is in fact nice to have. All right. And just like that, I have clean hands. Okay, pause the video now and come back when you have Autolyse for 45 minutes. See you soon. Okay, we're back. Your dough should look like this. Looks a little more like dough, and it's a little bit stretchier than it was when we first put it in. The beauty of this is it means that we aren't going to have to knead it for nearly as long because it's fully hydrated, or as close to fully hydrated as we're gonna get. So I've just taken it out of my airtight container and I stuck it in the bowl that we were using before. And then we're going to add some ingredients to it, and we're gonna knead those ingredients in. So I'll need to weigh them up. First things first, we're gonna need in some yeast. So this is instant yeast. We need 7 grams of instant yeast. Also, if you have one of these guys, it is 2 1/4 teaspoons. It's called a yeast spoon. Anyhow, it measures out nicely. So we're just gonna pour it over the top of our dough, and we're gonna start to knead it in. Just use your hands so you don't have to use the spatula anymore. In fact, we don't need that anymore at all. So all we're doing is just pushing the dough into the yeast. As it kind of, some of it will go right in the middle, and some of it will kind of spill into the bowl. As you can see, give you a little bit of a different perspective. As long as it picks up that yeast, will be good. Instant yeast, one of the reasons why I like to use it is it doesn't have to be proofed like active dry yeast would. So we can use Autolyse more efficiently if we're using instant yeast. All right, no problem if it's not fully incorporated yet, but there it is. Next, we want to add our salt. And we need 6 grams of salt. All right, and that's just plain old kitchen salt, table salt, if you will. This one's not iodized, but you can use iodized, it won't hurt anything. Use what you've got. Some people might opt for sea salt or kosher salt, which is actually what I usually use, but I wanted to make this as common ingredient friendly as possible. That's that. So next we're gonna put some sugar in there. I've got some cane sugar. This is organic and fair trade, but it's just cane sugar. So if you have white granulated sugar, it will function in the exact same way. And we need 25 grams of this sugar. It's about 2 tablespoons. If you're concerned about it, you can use a sugar alternative, such as honey. Just add about the same amount of honey as you would sugar. I do not recommend using sugar substitutes such as aspartame or NutraSweet or some of those chemical sweeteners which are not so good for your body. Highly unrecommended to do that. You probably noticed that your dough is it feels a little grainy. It's okay, don't worry about it. You're gonna knead it in until it's nice and smooth. We need to get it started in the right direction before we do the next step, which is adding butter. Because when you first start kneading in butter by hand, it feels, well, hopeless. But don't be hopeless. You can do it. We're gonna do it together. All right. The way we do butter, and this is unsalted butter, I'm gonna put 2 tablespoons or 28 grams in. And if you go over just a little bit, it's not that big of a deal. If you go under, it's also not that big of a deal. Butter enriches the dough and makes it turn out softer, which is what you want from a nice sandwich loaf. So if you look here, 1 tablespoon, 2 tablespoons, that's how I usually do it. I don't even bother to weigh it. But I will say this is an important thing, okay? If I just took this big chunk of butter and shoved it in there and tried to knead it in, it would not go well for me. And it won't go well for you either, so don't do that. What you need to do is take some little slivers and just work it in. Just press it in with your fingers and squish it in. You want it to absorb the butter, not have big giant chunks left in it of butter. If you do leave chunks, you'll have pockets in your bread that will open up and you'll have big holes, basically. So to avoid that, we add the butter a little bit at a time. I'm talking like, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch, thick slices, something like that. Pardon my noisy spoon. See, I'm just kind of working it in. And when I see butter, I squish it with my thumb. This is room temperature, so it's probably around 70 degrees in here. If your house is warmer, then you might have softer butter than I do. Or if it's sat for longer out, you'll have softer butter than I have. Or if it's straight out of the fridge, it's going to be harder and it will not knead in quite as easily, but it will eventually knead in. All you have to do is just keep going. And I'm gonna set this aside. Just kind of squish it in there. There's no technical term for this. This is highly technical butter squishing. Not gonna need that anymore. We're gonna go straight onto the bench, as they call it in other countries, or your countertop if you're here in the USA. And just use your hands to squish it. We're in the kneading process at this point. We are kneading the butter right into the dough. See how it's separating a little bit, so that tells me that that butter is not fully incorporated. And it's like magic, really. As you keep kneading, you continue to incorporate the butter. And normally I do this with a stand mixer, so I don't have my hands all in it. But as you incorporate the butter, it'll start to become less slick and less sticky feeling. But like I said before, you might start to feel a little hopeless, but don't worry, it comes together. Now, you're probably looking at this going, oh my gosh, what have I gotten into? And I'm telling you, it's no big deal, but please do not add any flour. You will regret your decision. You'll come out with a dry loaf that no one will enjoy. So just keep at it. Use those muscles. If you want to get two hands in there, get two hands in there. When it's only one loaf, I don't feel like I need two hands to get the job done. Plus that leaves one hand kind of clean for doing other tasks. And when I'm doing this, I'm pushing it with the heel of my hand and I'm not pinching it, but I'm closing my hand a little bit as I push. So it sort of squeezes it together. Gently, but not so much that it, gets between my fingers. Keep my fingers sorted together. And as you can see, it's actually starting to come together. If you get tired, stop. Just take a rest. Let it rest there for a second. It allows the gluten to relax a little bit and becomes a little more workable. 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there. You got this. I'm gonna pick up some of this over here that I got on the countertop here. And then, let's see. I opened the right drawer? Yes, I did. Okay, I have a tool. This tool is called a bench scraper. I bought mine from King Arthur Flour a long time ago. Sometimes they call it a dough blade. And what it's used for is to scrape the countertop or the bench, depending on where you might be. And also scrape off your fingers. Just scrape it along the bench. If you don't have one of these, just keep going with your hands. I'm kind of like scooping underneath it as I scrape across. But you see that I'm cleaning off the countertop a little bit as I do that. Not leaving any dough behind. And unfortunately, enriched dough is probably one of the harder doughs to get to window pane status. But because we did our Autolyse, it'll be a little bit easier for us. This is also not a super high hydration. It's only about 65%, which is where I kind of like to stay with yeasted doughs. It gives you a nice crumb that's worthy of sandwich bread. See, it's not sticking to my hands or the countertop nearly as much. And I bet yours is getting less sticky too. Still sticking to my hand just a little bit, but that's why you want to use your hands, because then you can tell if you've reached that point of the best elasticity. You'll notice that I still haven't added any flour, and I'm not going to. Spoiler alert, no more flour. Please don't add flour. When I was a young baker, like first getting started, I thought I would follow these recipes that I saw in books and magazines, and a lot of them were written by, I think, homemakers, honestly, not by professionals in any way. And so they were saying, you know, add this much flour, but then reserve this much flour to add it later. But what happens when you do that is that you end up with kind of dry pieces in your dough, because the flour soaks up as much water as it can in the very beginning. And then when you start adding flour, you create kind of a crust around the outside. And then if you're kneading that, you're kneading that crustiness in. And it turns out to be like little chunks, dry chunks in your dough. That is not what you want, right? Nobody wants dry chunks in their final loaf, and that's what you'll end up with if you add flour as you go. So I promised this was minute for minute, and I'm sorry, this takes a little while. If we were using a stand mixer, it would probably go a little bit faster, but hey, we're not, so let's enjoy this time together. Just you, me, and our dough. Are you getting tired? Still just a little bit sticky, but it's definitely coming together. If you want to do some folds, you can do that, kind of fold it into itself. There we go. See how that just all of a sudden stopped sticking? I'm actually having a harder time keeping it on the counter because it's really coming together nicely and becoming a nice, smooth dough. Still got some, you know, little peaks here and there. But all in all, it's a nice, smooth dough. I'm gonna tell you a secret. I don't always get to window pane, and I don't really care. Higher hydration doughs are easier to get to window pane, but you see it's tearing just a little bit, but that just means we're so close. Anyway, window pane is when you pull it up like I just did. Kind of pinch it up, and if it stretches without tearing, you know, across a reasonable distance and you can kind of see through it, that's window pane. So it's nice and extensible. All right. Well, I don't want to risk overworking my dough, but doing it by hand, it's pretty hard to do. You might want to pick it up off the bench and kind of roll it, see? And there you have it. Nice, smooth dough. Give it a spank if you like. That's what my friend Becca does. She's the queen of spanking the dough. Very funny girl. If you want to learn sourdough, she's one to learn from. All right, so this very same container that we used for Autolyse, we're gonna put it right back in there. And this is a little bit big of a container, but you can take a look at it right now. And what I'm aiming to do is doubling it in size. So again, just like Autolyse, we're gonna leave it on the counter. This time it has yeast in it though, so it is going to rise and it's going to change shape. So I'm gonna leave it on the countertop gonna take one last look at it before I put the lid on. Yours should look like this. If it doesn't look like this, keep working and you'll get there. All right, we're gonna snap on our lid and we're just gonna leave it right here on the counter at room temperature to do its thing. So now it's time to pause the video and come back a little bit later. If you haven't already done so, make sure you like and subscribe so that you can come right back to this video should you happen to lose it in the hustle and bustle of everyday life. This should take around 30 to 45 minutes. So check it around 30 minutes and see where you're at. If you aren't quite doubled, give it another 5 or 10 minutes. Just keep checking it every 5 minutes after about 40 minutes have passed. And once it's doubled in size, we don't want to go past an hour. So at an hour, whatever it looks like is what we're going to go with. All right? See you soon. Welcome back. If your dough has doubled in volume, as it should have, it should look something like this. We're just gonna dump it out right here onto the counter. Probably sticks a little bit, it's okay. Just use your fingers to get that extra dough that's stuck, if yours happens to stick. Minute for minute, you get to see it all. Okay, we got it here on the countertop, and I'm just gonna give it some stretching. We're gonna do our shape, so this is called envelope fold, and although I've got a little bit stuck to the counter here. When you do that, you just pull it out, pull it up, pull it out, fold, and then rotate it just a little bit. Do the same thing. It's gonna start to get harder to pull. But it'll start to make a loaf-like shape. That's 2. 3, and last one. All right, I'm just gonna go ahead and roll this over the top. See, I'm kind of pulling it across the countertop. Then we're gonna take our bread pan. Now, if you have a silicone coated pan like I do, you can skip the step of greasing the pan. If you don't, rub the sides with some butter. Easy enough. All right, we're gonna put it right here inside of our loaf pan, and then I'm just gonna simply cover it up with a tea towel.
We need to preheat our oven about halfway through this process. Put your oven on 350.
Once it has risen to be 1 inch above the rim of the baking pan, you're ready to bake. So we're gonna let this rest, pause, and I'll see you when your loaf has risen 1 inch above the top rim of your pan. All right, should take about 30 minutes or so. Depends on how warm it is in your house. Could be a little bit longer. All right, pause now. We'll see you again soon. Welcome back. Hopefully your bread has risen just like mine has. I'll show you. So it's about 1 inch above the edge of the pan, see that? And then I do what's called the poke test. Now, if you don't know what the poke test is, I will show you how it works. It is pretty reliable, and what you want is for the dough to rebound slowly. If you depress your finger into it, Rebound slowly and leave a little bit of an impression. So this dough is right on. It's a little bit hard to see, I know, but here, I'll try it over here for you. I'll make a shadow. See how it just stays depressed just a little bit, but it rose back, sprung back. That's what we're looking for. All right, so it's now time to put this in the oven. Put it right in the middle, and we're gonna give it 30 minutes. And then I'm gonna check its temperature. Usually 30 to 35 minutes is approximately the amount of time that you're gonna need. What we're shooting for is an internal temperature of 195 degrees Fahrenheit. If you pull it around 200 or 210, it'll still be fine. It'll be a little bit drier. So 190, 195, something like that. All right, I'll see you in about 30 minutes. About 30 minutes have passed, so it's time to go and check on our bread. I've got my instant read thermometer, and we're going over to the oven. I'm gonna go handheld so you can see inside the oven. There we go. Oh yes, that looks very good. All right, so you wanna stick your thermometer in right kind of in the middle, and I try to stay off the side of the pan. And we are at 204, so it is definitely time to pull that bread. Perfect. I'm just gonna go ahead and turn off the oven. I use these guys. Good stuff. But I can't do that and hold the phone at the same time. Oh. That is the right stuff right there. Love that smell. So I like to give mine a little jiggle to make sure it releases from the pan and just comes right out. And you hear him say you should be able to thump on the bottom to hear if it's done. That's what it should sound like. And then put it right here on our cooling rack. Part of my essential baking tools. The cooling rack allows for airflow to flow all the way around and underneath so you don't get a soggy bottom. Otherwise, moisture will collect in the bottom and not good. So I'm actually gonna have to leave this for a little while because I have to go and take care of my children. So I'm just gonna cover it with the tea towel that I have, but I'm making sure that there's some airflow up underneath there. The tea towel will just, cover it up and keep it from going stale, sitting out here on the counter. So I'll come back and check in a couple of hours when it's completely cool, and it has to be completely cool. I know, warm bread right out of the oven sounds so tempting, but I promise you, you will regret it if you cut it too soon. Let it cool completely. I hope yours turned out as well as mine did, and I'll show you what the inside looks like, and we'll see what yours looks like too. Go ahead and pause that video, and we'll see you in a couple hours. Bye. Okay, are you ready for the moment of truth? Here it is. I've let it cool for 2 hours. It's cool to the touch. Maybe just a little bit warm, but it won't affect it at all. Let's see what we got. Use my trusty offset bread knife. All right, it's looking good. Not bad at all. It has a nice tender crumb and it's not too open. A little bit of overproofing here. I knew there was going to be just a little bit because of the bubbles. It may not actually be overproofing as much as it is just there was a bubble that got left behind. It's very soft. springs back like it's supposed to. And it smells so good. Well, the only thing left to do is have a taste. It's very good. I hope your loaf is as good as mine. I had a great time making it with you, and thanks for coming along for the Bake Along. I'm Chef Dave Palmer, and I'll see you next time.